Okay, so the big news this weekend, and it's something I want to focus on for the rest of the lecture, is the Americans said that one of their jets, called an F15, this is about a $90 million plane, okay? It was shot down over Iran, okay? Basically in this area right here. And you ask yourself, okay, the Americans have air supremacy over Iran, so how is it possible for the Iranians to shoot down a plane? And the answer is this: the U.S. Air Force is not designed to fight a long war. It's designed to fight at most a 2-week war. If you fight for too long, you have certain issues. One issue is maintenance, okay? Which is, these are very expensive planes. They require a lot of maintenance. But if they're flying too much, if they have too much work, they suffer from wear and tear, okay? Another issue is just fatigue, where these pilots are being asked to work too hard, they get tired, they get lazy. Now, the last thing is this: Iranian resilience. Okay, and all this means is that as you're bombing the Iranians have to figure out how to strike back at you. Their radar systems don't really work, so what they use is heat-seeking missiles. Okay? So rather than try to figure out where you are, they just fly missiles up in the air and hope to lock onto your heat signature and knock you down, okay? Alright, so over time, all this means is that as this war progresses, if you insist on fighting an air war, you're going to lose more and more planes. As your pilots get tired, as maintenance issues arise, as the Iranians become much more creative in their response. Okay? So a pilot was shot down, and 2 pilots were able to eject safely out of their plane. Now, it is the policy of the American military to leave no man behind. And this is and the Americans are one of the few militaries actually do this, where if you're behind enemy lines, they will try to rescue you. And they spent years training you on how to evade enemy captors. They'll spend a lot of resources trying to save you. And the propaganda is that this is to show you how Americans really value human life. And it's something that Americans are very proud of. But another reason why the Americans do this is this optics, which is that the Americans believe that the military is invincible. And they spend a lot of money and resources in order to create this image, this aura of invincibility and invisibility. So if the Iranians are able to capture a pilot and have him appear on Iranian TV, this is a huge propaganda win for the Iranians. Meaning that if the Americans will try your best. The Americans will try their best to save you, but if they can't save you and there's a risk that the enemy will capture you, they'd rather have you killed. Okay? Because they can't afford to lose this propaganda war. For the Americans, everything is optics. And as I'll show you later on, this is going to be a huge issue in this war, okay, as this war progresses. Now, there are a lot of issues with the story that's being told to us, okay? So Americans said that they have successfully evacuated both pilots. They have saved both pilots. But the issue is this. The issue is that we know that the Americans created a makeshift landing strip, basically an airport, a small airport, 200 kilometers from where the airman actually was knocked down. So he had to hike a long way in order to get to the landing strip. Also, he was injured. I mean, he broke his ankle or something, okay? So that was very, very hard to do. Also, he's trying to evade enemy capture. Okay, so this story doesn't really make sense. And why did the Americans decide to create a landing strip here rather than someplace closer? And why would you need 155 planes for this operation, right? Aren't you better off with just 1 or 2 to like avoid enemy fire? So this is a very strange story. But it gets weirder, okay? It turns out that the Americans basically spent a lot of resources to save the pilot. It took 48 hours, and the CIA created a lot of distractions. And the Americans spent a lot of resources to save the man while the Iranians were trying to capture him, okay? And this led to the destruction of very expensive American planes. Okay, these are called C-130, so they're transport planes. And they were destroyed in the rescue operation. Now, the American story is that these planes were caught in the sand. They couldn't lift off. So Delta Force, the commandos who are trying to save the pilot, they blew up the planes themselves. Okay? And as you can see, the Americans in this operation, they lost a lot of expensive planes. The estimates are the Americans lost $300 million in planes. And even though the Americans say that there were no casualties in this rescue, we can expect that there were casualties in this rescue because a lot of planes were destroyed, okay? And again, these are very expensive planes. And throughout this war, the Americans have lost quite a few planes. The C